10 and welcome to your last walking talking mark for paper 1. Now we are of course on question 5. Now one of the things that we want you to consider is that probably you might do this question first. So we've got paper 1, question 5. Okay, and this might be actually your first question, the question that you go to first and you do first. Now if you are going to do this question first, you do need to make sure that you spend no longer than 45 minutes on this section. And what I tend to say is that in about 45 minutes you should be able to write about 2 to 3 maximum, don't write any more than that, sides of creative writing. Now of course all of that is based around the size of your handwriting, but like you don't, it's about the quality of what you write. It's not about like so much the quantity in this question. So a really lovely, well-crafted 5-paragraph story with a really clear like shift and focus and structure and similes and metaphors is the kind of thing that you're looking for. Now, as you will be aware, you always get like 2 options. Now they don't call it A or B, for example. Okay, so that just shows you that they are these questions are there to give you a bit of a springboard. So for example, it says write a description as suggested by the picture. So I've got here it looks like a very old family photo. You've got a terrace kind of looking house there, a car outside. You've got a person, like a young person on a motorbike, and quite often what you tend to find is that the picture is kind of half linked to the extract, but not really. And this is why I always say that you can go to do the question first, and sometimes actually not reading the question, the source first, means that you're likely to write something that's a bit more creative because you're not relying on the story to help you or give you some ideas. However, I am going to use for the purpose of today kind of that to see how I would go about it. Now the first question says write a description as suggested by the picture. Now I've highlighted suggested because that becomes really important. Like loads of pupils see the picture and they panic and they're like, I need to describe what's in the picture. No, you do not need to specifically describe what is in the picture. The word suggested means kind of inspired. So you might describe a child, but it might not look exactly like this child. You might describe a child on a bicycle. You might decide to describe a row of terrace houses. You might decide to describe a car. You might decide to describe a child. You might decide to describe somebody standing outside the picture and looking in. You might decide, if this picture doesn't clearly give us the weather, but you might decide to describe the weather. Okay, so it's up to you actually. Like the word suggested is there to guide you and help you. Now the next bit that he says is write a story where you meet a new person. Now I'm gonna do this one. Okay, this is the one that I'm going to be doing a walking talking mug on. I'm going to show you that actually how I'm going to use this one to help, inspired by the picture a tiny bit. Okay, so one of the things that you do want to make sure that you do for this question is that ultimately you do plan your answers. Okay, do take or spend 5 minutes at least trying to plan, trying to think about how to write your answer. And I'm looking for a bit of line paper that hasn't been used. Okay, I'm going to use this one now. So I'm doing this because I want to be able to see my picture actually as I'm planning, so that you can see where I'm going with this. Now you might wish to plan on here. Okay, you might wish to plan on here, or you might wish to plan on your piece of line paper. And your planning might just take, actually I'm just going to show you how much of space you want your planning to take really. Might just take maybe about half a page of your picture. And what that means is that you're not then going to spend too long writing too many things in your plan. Now the first thing that I like doing when I'm doing my plan is I like to write a summary. Okay, so this is a summary, and this pretty much is going to be one sentence of what my story is going to be about. Now it says here write a story where you meet a new person. So the summary of my story is going to be a man meets, no, sorry, man moves to a new house and meets a local child. Now look at that story. I'm not making it really fancy. I'm keeping it basic because the way that I'm going to get a lot of my marks is the way that I describe and I use similes and I use metaphors and I use engaging language. That is actually what's going to get me my marks mainly. Writing in a really engaging, interesting way. Now, I've got that as my main bit of kind of a summary, and then I decide whether I'm going to write it in first person or third person. Now, I'm going to write it in the first person. Okay, so I do this, I do that. Okay, but I do need to be careful that not all my sentences start with I, because otherwise that makes it a bit boring. But also, the other thing that I'm going to choose now, so then my writing kind of stays consistent, is that I'm going to write it in the past tense. So I'm going to write like I was, I could hear, there was. I'm going to make sure that I'm consistently writing in the correct tense. One of the things I notice is that, or it happens a lot, that pupils start in the present tense and then they move to the past tense and they're not necessarily using a flashback, which means that there is no consistency in their writing. So being clear in terms of the tense that you're going to write in actually massively helps. And even though I'm writing in the past tense, I can still use a flashback within the past tense of my writing. It doesn't, like, you've got the past. So I might be saying, what I mean by that is, imagine it's like he stood there watching the young child play outside. As he stood there, he remembered the time when he was. Can you see? I'm putting a flashback there, so but I'm still using the past tense throughout. Okay, so just make sure that you're really clear in terms of the tense that you are using. The other thing that I try to remember and make sure that this is kind of, before I even start planning what's going to happen in each of my paragraphs, I do need to make sure that I'm using, and I might make it here, like I'll make a list of things that will ensure that I get a range of marks. So I need to vary my sentences, okay? Now, I tend to find that most people use like simple sentences and compound sentences, even complex sentences, but they forget maybe to use the odd minor sentence, okay? Just use it once or twice, every now and then, maybe as a one-line paragraph, but like your minor sentence is that one-word sentence that is tends to be like a noun. So I might say something like darkness as a one sentence, or silence, and that can be actually quite effective and can break your writing down a tiny bit, so it's not always really long sentences. The other thing that you want to remember is that like you vary the way that you start your sentences. So you know that I've already spoken about this thing that I'm going to write in the first person. So one of the things that I need to remember though is that I might use actually like I space sentences. And what that means is that sometimes my sentences might start with an ing verb, they might start with a simile, they might start with a preposition, they might start with an adverb, they might start with a connective, or they might start with an ed verb, okay? Now, what that does is it ensures that I'm not always writing, I stood there, I saw the child, I thought this, I thought that. So, for example, if I started with an ing verb, it might be so running around the streets, comma, I could see the child being wild. So you're varying the way that you start your sentences. So I just write that. I'm not using this as a tick list to like use it. It's just a reminder that if I notice that I'm not changing the way that I write, I go, oh, I need to start and try and write it slightly different. The other thing that I just think is really important is that you include your techniques. Now, I think there are literally 3 techniques that you can use, and they are good enough. Like, you want to make sure that somewhere you have a simile, you want to make sure that somewhere you have a metaphor, and you want to make sure that somewhere you have personification. not even 5. Actually, I'm just going to say that you want to use at least these ones once or twice in your piece. And can I just say, personification in particular is a great one. And you want to make sure that these techniques are there within your first paragraphs. Like, make the examiner want to give you like tick, 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 ticks. Okay? And having those techniques, crafting these techniques, really help you with that. The next thing that I like to remember is I've got my sentences. I want to make sure that I use that minor sentence somewhere. I want to make sure that I'm following I space. I want to make sure that I've got these techniques, but also actually your punctuation. Okay? Now for your punctuation, I'm going to say you should be using full stops and you should be using commas. That's a given, and capital letters, they are important. But then you might want to at least once use a semicolon, a colon, and a dash. Okay, at least once in your piece of writing, somewhere you want to be using those 3 techniques. Okay, 3 pieces of punctuation. Now, when it comes to the main planning of my idea, I literally plan like my 5 paragraphs. Now, my paragraphs, so I've got paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4, and paragraph 5. And what this does is just, it reminds me what I'm going to focus on in loads of detail in each of the sections of my story. So like, for example, on paragraph 1, I am going to focus on describing the weather and the setting. Okay, now one of the things I'm going to do with my weather is going to be, I'm going to make it a bit windy and a bit cloudy. Okay, because my characters moved into this house, but because the picture reminds me of like terraces houses, so I'm thinking of maybe a bit like an industrial town, and I'm actually gonna like create this setting of it being set, I don't know why it came to mind, but like Manchester. I'm thinking of Manchester, it's up north, it's gonna be a bit cold, it's gonna be a bit grizzly. And I'm already thinking about actually personifying both the wind and my house. So I'm going to put here house. Now I'm going to personify the wind by saying that it's, I don't know, maybe rolling down the street. I'm getting this ready. Like an old man, maybe. And I'm going to talk about maybe it's rattling the drain pipes and it's grumbling, so it's creating the sound of the wind. So that's just my idea at the beginning, and I would develop that maybe into about 2-3 sentences. Like the wind would also maybe affect some leaves. Okay, so like, and I'm going to make it in autumn again, so like it makes it a bit cold, makes it a bit grizzly, just because I'm setting my story in Manchester. Then I'm going to describe my house. Now, because I've got I'm going to describe a terrace house. Okay, I'm going to describe a terrace house. I'm going to talk about how my house is maybe like hunched, because like it's tied, squeezed between 2 neighbors. And then I'm going to talk about having it just like 1 door, 1 window. I'm going to use a bit of anaphora there, 1, 1, 1. And then as well with my house, I'm going to think about describing the bricks. Okay, now because it's in a town, an industrial town, I might describe them as the bricks being like blackened. Okay, because of the soot and things like that. So I'm getting a sense of the setting. And I will actually describe my character actually in here, maybe saying how this was a new street for them. New street, new life. Now, I'm only going to I'm not going to say much about my character. I'm just going to kind of add that this is a new place for them. Now, my paragraph 2 is going to be focusing on actually like maybe, what am I going to say about like maybe the physical, no, the character spotting the boy. Okay, so main character spots boy. Okay, now they're going to spot this boy, so I'm going to describe a physical description of the boy. Okay, and I want to make sure that I get a sense that he is young. So I'm gonna say, for example, I'm gonna say that he's gonna have a. Let me see. I've got some ideas in terms of how I want to describe him. I'm gonna say that he's no older than 10. So I'm gonna get no older 10. I'm gonna say that. Oh, I'm gonna describe his hair first. So the way that I'm gonna see him is gonna be a flash of gold. Okay. Now I was gonna say a flash of red. I was gonna make him ginger, but I've changed my mind. I'm gonna give him a flash of gold. I'm gonna talk about because I think that'd be a nice contrast between like the weather and the dreary street. I'm gonna talk about his haircut. Now I'm gonna give him a really like 80s haircut. So he's gonna have like a blunt fringe. He's gonna have a blunt, like like when they cut it like really straight. And then I might describe, because he's an outgoing boy, I might describe like holes in his jeans and maybe a bit of like mud on his cheek, because that is kind of suggesting that he's been out and about. Okay. And then what I might do in my paragraph 3 is that the guy sees this boy. Okay. And then I'm going to have a bit of a flashback. And what I'm going to do is a flashback is going to be about the man remembering his own childhood. Okay, so it's going to be about the man remembering his own childhood. And like what I might do is he might contrast himself to the boy. So rather than having a flash of gold hair, is he's got the man had dark auburn. Auburn is like a brownish curls. Or you might, or maybe not curls, because I've already given him like the boy. I've given him a bit of longer hair. He's remembering his childhood now. Rather than playing like this boy gets to play, he had to like work hard. For example, maybe, and was stuck inside. Couldn't go out. So I might develop my character being a bit of a contrast to the boy. Okay, that is nice. You want to have contrast as well. And then it goes to paragraph 4. Now in the paragraph 4, I'm not a big fan of speech. Can I be honest? I try to avoid speech, but I might have a really short exchange. So that means that maybe it's not going to be 4 paragraphs. It's going to be more like 6, because whenever a character speaks, you need to use a new line. So I'm going to start something like the boy saying, so just a speech, you're new. Something like, you new. So not you are new, you're new. Because that kind of shows that colloquial way of speaking. And I might talk about kind of like the way that the boy fixed their confident voice. Confident voice. And then the man will answer yes. Okay, not very long. I'm going to focus more on describing how he answers. So yes will be like kind of composing himself, and that shows that you're breaking the flashback. He's coming back to the present. So composing himself, taken back by the boy's confidence. Okay, so this is just kind of me going through my idea. So I will do this, then I will do this. Now what I might do, because I want to develop this boy, so that would be like paragraph 4, 5, because remember, new character speaking is a new line. So I'm just going to get rid of that, because this sometimes happens. You start planning, you change your mind. So I'm going to do paragraph, so that'd be paragraph 4, paragraph 5, and then paragraph 6. I don't know why, but I want to describe the boy tells the man. So tells man about different people. So it might be something like, oh, welcome to the street. You have to be careful about Mrs. Smith down the road. her dog barks at you every time, you know. Like, I might write something like that. So the boy gives her a tiny bit, gives him, sorry, a tiny bit of a background about different people. And then, like my paragraph 5, to bring it to a conclusion, what I'm gonna do is, because I've described the weather and the being a bit windy, I might actually describe rain. Okay, so a rain began to fall. Now, I'm not gonna like make it pour. I'm gonna like create it because the boy needs to go, and my character needs to go back inside the house. So I might describe like a rain, a drop of rain. So a drop of rain fell. So I'm just gonna put here, and I might use adjectives like heavy, or maybe I use my minor sentence: fat, heavy, flopping on a car. Like just this one drop of rain. And then what I'm gonna say, because that makes me link it to the beginning, and then what I would do is how the boy cycled away. His blonde like in the story they described it as like wisping or something. I might use that, the way that her hair was described. Oh, streaming. There you go. He's cycled away, his blonde hair streaming in the wind. Okay. Now, I've shown you this because this is a plan. Like, you wouldn't, doesn't mean that you need to write this, okay, at all. And you will have a different picture on the day. But what I'm trying to show you is that you can literally go to a story and plan, already go into your exam knowing how to describe a windy day, or knowing how to describe a rainy day, or knowing how to describe a sunny day. Then the way that you shift always to describing a character, then you have a flashback. I personally wouldn't always have what's it called, dialogue, but I wanted to, and I keep the dialogue very simple, not loads of exchanges, literally a maximum of 3 exchanges. And then I need to bring my story to an end. The character, actually that's paragraph 7, and the character needs to be going home, so I'm going to make it rain and the boy goes home. So the simpler you keep your story, the better. I always think about kind of this idea of one character, and what I mean by that, the main person that's telling you your story. And in my story, it is the man, but his encounter with this other character. So you do need maybe that possibility of 2. One setting, one event. Okay? So, and that makes your story really focus, because it's not about, I'm going to be honest, it's not about the content of your story, like what your story is about, that's going to get you the marks. It's how you write your story. Are you personifying things? Are you using similes? Are you making it clear that you're going from one paragraph to the next? Now, by planning it this way, what it helps you do is make sure that when you start writing, okay, that you are ticking and you are using paragraphs as you go along. The other thing that I say is that you want maybe your paragraphs to be about 3 to 5 sentences long. That ensures that you're developing your ideas. So if each of your paragraphs, except maybe these ones, are 3 to 5 paragraphs long, and then maybe you have that 1-line paragraph, it will make your story that much better and that much more engaging. But it also ensures that you're developing, okay? You want to make sure that you're developing your ideas, that you're describing in detail, okay? So hopefully this is kind of something to give you an idea. Now, your teacher's going to give you about 20 minutes now to plan a story, okay? It could be based on this picture, it could be based on the other bit, and also some time to maybe write your first paragraph of that story.